Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to my DPS Bible. So this video is going to be a complete guide for every DPS character, or a complete DPS guide for every character, even characters that aren't traditionally DPSs. I'm going to be showing you guys how to build every single one of them. And some important things before I start that I really want everyone to know. First of all, there are going to be timestamps. This is a long video, I know, but it's a really detailed one because what we're doing is we're talking about best artifact sets, stats, weapon, and also talent priority, but usually talent priority for DPSs is normal attacks, like first. So what we're doing is, if that's not true, if for a specific character you don't want normal attacks first, I will specify it. But in general, it is normal attack first. And so to avoid making this video a year long, what I'm doing is I'm talking about literally the best things you should go for, but also free to play options. So basically for weapons, we're going to do best weapon, and then we're going to talk about the battle pass since it's like almost free to play. We'll talk about if the battle pass one is good, slash good 4-star options, and then the best free to play for every character. Artifact wise, we're going to be giving the best set and some alternatives if there are good alternatives. We're going to be talking about best artifact stats, what you should prioritize, and just basically an all-in-one for every character without making it too long. Last thing is Zhongli, who's like my math guy, did help me out a lot. He made a nice spreadsheet as well that I used when I wasn't sure of a character, so go check that out. And most important thing is be sure to check the pinned comment if there is one, because if I want to add information or if I forget something, or if I'm like, oh, actually this weapon, it turns out to be good as well, I will put it in the pinned comment. My last video on all supports, because this is all DPS, on my support video, there's only like 1 or 2 things I had to add, but still good stuff to know, so be sure to check it if it is there. I don't want to make this intro too long, but these are just important things that I thought I should clarify before we get into the video. Last thing I want you guys to know is that I stream most nights on Twitch. Definitely come stop by if you want to. One thing you guys should know as well is that we're going to be ordering this by element, so it'll be block of elements with timestamps obviously for every character on the time bar. And so we're going to start with Geo, because why not, and then we're going to move element to element. For Ningguang, there's a lot of good options. I honestly think every single 5-star is good on her, but the best one should be the Lost Prayer for the crit rate and the good effect, and it's just a really good book for DPS characters. But Memory of Dust and Atlas are also good. I would highly recommend the Battle Pass weapon, the Solar Pearl, if you can get it, because it's great. It buffs your normal attacks, it buffs your elemental skill, and while it doesn't buff your charge attacks, it's not a big deal because it just buffs everything else. And for free-to-play options, the Frostbearer Catalyst, the one from Dragonspine, should be the best, if not Mapamari. So artifact-wise, there's 3 good options. First of all, there's the 2 Archaic Petra with 2 Glad, which is what I usually run because it's really good overall. 50% geo damage bonus and 18% attack from Glad is just good. You can also run 2 Noblesse instead of the 2 Glad, which is what I run in a Quickswap team when I'm using a lot of geo characters. 2 Petra with 2 Noblesse is also very good, more burst damage. And another good set is 4-piece Bolide, but I personally prefer 2 Petra, 2 Glad, but 4 Bolide is also very good. For your stats, you want attack percent on your sands, geo damage bonus on your goblet for sure, and crit rate or damage on your circlet, depending on what you need. DPS Zhongli is actually pretty sick, and for him I would highly recommend the Crescent Pike. It's the best free-to-play option, and it's just so good overall. Even if you have 5-star weapons like Jade Spear, unless it's like R5 or something, overall Crescent Pike still gives you more normal attack damage, especially if you refine it. So I always just recommend Crescent Pike. Now Jade Spear and other 5-stars give you more burst damage and skill damage, but since Crescent Pike gives you more normal attack damage and is free to play and you can refine it, it's always what I'll recommend for Zhongli. For your artifact sets, there's a few good ones, but the best one for a Crescent Pike DPS Zhongli is 2-piece Glad with 2-piece Bloodstained. Now I go into more detail about 2 Bloodstained, 2 Glad in my Zhongli DPS video, but basically what you need to know is that 2 Bloodstained, 2 Glad buffs your Zhongli, but also your Crescent Pike's passive. So it'll buff the secondary hit right here, and I talk about this when I talk about Xiangling as well, so sorry if I'm repeating myself, but 2 Bloodstained, 2 Glad basically buffs your Crescent Pike, so that's usually the best. You can also run a 4-piece Gladiator or a 4-piece Bolide for the 40% normal and charge attack damage, especially with like other spears, but for Crescent Pike I usually just recommend 2 Bloodstained Chivalry and 2 Gladiators. For your stats, you definitely want attack percent on the sands, physical damage bonus on the goblet, and crit rate or damage on the circlet. If you're running Noelle as a DPS, the Skyward Pride is actually the best, and then Serpent Spine is the best Battle Pass weapon and best 4-star, and if you're free to play, White Blind is the best. For Noelle's artifacts, I'd highly recommend 4-piece either Retracing Bolide or Gladiator. Something to note is 4 Glad is a bit higher damage because you get the 18% attack, but Bolide is very close and it also increases your shield strength, and it's much easier to farm for good substats on Bolide than it is on Gladiator. So I usually recommend Bolide, but Glad is more DPS with the same substats. For your stats, you'd want Geo damage on the goblet. I also wanted to mention that physical goblets and attack goblets are actually viable if you don't perma have your ult up, basically. Attack is for overall, physical is if you don't have enough ER, and Geo is usually the best when you can spam your ult. So I recommend Geo Goblet, but it can depend. And if you need more information, be sure to check out Crush SG's Noelle guide. Crit rate or damage on the circlet for sure. And now your sands actually depends. Basically, if you're not C6, attack percent is the best because, you know, attack on Noelle is good. But if you are Constellation 6 on Noelle, defense percent is actually better for a DPS build. Now, if you look at your constellations, at C6, you gain a bunch of attack for your defense. So stacking defense, even for DPS Noelle, would be better. For Ganyu, it's pretty straightforward. As a DPS, you really want Amos Bow. That's the best 5-star weapon. It's just so good on Ganyu. So Amos Bow if you can. If not, the best 4-star weapon is the Prototype Crescent, which you can get from the blacksmith. So that is what I would recommend. Now, if you don't have prototypes and you can't get it, you can use like the Battle Pass weapon. That's also very good. Same with like Blackcliff. But the best 4-star is still the free-to-play one, the Prototype Crescent. Also worth mentioning that the only bow better than that is the Skyward Harp or the Amos Bow. So Amos Bow is the best, if not Harp, if not Prototype Crescent. Artifact wise, you try to get a 4-piece Wanderers if you can. 4-piece Wanderers is definitely the best for Ganyu because it gives you 35% charge attack damage and elemental mastery, which is great if you're running her as a melt, like a melt Ganyu. If you can't get 4-piece Wanderers because it is really hard to get a good 4-piece Wanderers, like personally I don't have a good one, you can use something like a 4-piece Bolide if you're shielding, if you're running like a Zhongli or a Diona for the 40% charge attack damage. If not, a 2-piece Cryo set with another 2-piece, like either 2-piece Glad or 2-piece Wanderers. And Noblesse can work too, but I'd recommend either 2 Glad or 2 Wanderers if you're running Melt. Can be good for Ganyu. I'd also like to mention the 4-piece Blizzard Strayer set for a freeze Ganyu comp. For Ganyu, you'd usually want attack percent on the sands. Now keep in mind, if you're running Melt Ganyu with like a Xiangling constantly melting, elemental mastery sands can be better. But for a general Ganyu build, I'd recommend attack percent on the sands, cryo damage bonus on the goblet, and crit rate or damage on the circlet. For Chongyun DPS, the best weapon is the Wolf's Gravestone if you have it. If not, you can get the Battle Pass weapon, the Serpent Spine is very good, and the best free-to-play option is the Prototype Archaic. For Chongyun's artifacts, if you're running him as a main DPS, constantly attacking, 4-piece Glad is the best in slot damage-wise because of the 35% damage and the 18% attack, so it will give you the most damage overall. However, I do want to mention 2-piece Blizzard Strayer with 2-piece Glad also being good, and 4-piece Blizzard Strayer just for the first 20% crit rate is nice, and in a Shatter comp, if you can constantly get the 40% crit rate, it is best in slot, but as Shadowblood said, who is a Chongyun main, I'll link his video in the description, and he knows Chongyun better than I do. He says that's not reliable, and that overall 4 Glad seems to be better. 4-piece Blizzard Strayer is still good, but I would recommend 4 Glad overall. And for Chongyun, you definitely want attack percent on your sands, cryo damage bonus on your goblet, and crit on your circlet. Now for Kaeya DPS, the best weapon is the Summit Shaper. All the 5-stars are good though, like Jade Cutter and Aquila are also very nice. And the Black Sword as a Battle Pass weapon can be good for a 4-star option. Blackcliff Longsword being the best for the crit damage. The best free-to-play option is clearly the Prototype Rancor for the high base attack and the effect. And artifact-wise, you definitely want a 4-piece Blizzard Strayer on him, constantly getting that 40% crit rate if you're running a freeze comp, or at least 20% if you're not. But 4-piece Blizzard Strayer is just really good, and it makes Kaeya an excellent DPS. Now, I usually recommend running Kaeya with Chongyun for a perma-freeze comp where your normal attacks are constantly doing cryo damage. So for that, I would recommend a cryo damage goblet. Now, my friend Alexi did the math. Check him out, link in the description. And it seems that cryo damage goblet, even without Chongyun, is the best because of how much damage your E and Q does. But I think if you're not running Chongyun, physical damage can be a viable option. But overall, I would recommend a cryo damage goblet on Kaeya in general. But that being said, if you're constantly auto-attacking on Kaeya, you can run physical goblet, especially if you're running like a 4 Glad normal attack build. But that being said, for the general Kaeya build, since I'm showing like best build for every character, I recommend cryo goblet, I recommend the 4-piece cryo set, and I recommend running Kaeya if you can with Chongyun, with a attack percent sands and crit on the circlet. Now, ideally, you would want crit damage on the circlet over crit rate. And the reason I say that is because Your set effect gives you 40% crit rate if you're freezing, and Cryo Resonance gives you another 15. Kaeya C1, also if you have C1 Kaeya, will give you 15% crit rate. So overall, you just get so much crit rate on Kaeya that you would like to have crit damage on the circlet over crit rate if you can. Also keep in mind that leveling Kaeya's burst is really important. Now, I don't know if I should mention Qiqi as a main DPS or not, but if you do want to run her main DPS, she's kind of similar to Kaeya. You'd run ideally a Jade Cutter as the best weapon, if not Black Sword from the Battle Pass would be really good, or free-to-play weapon Prototype Roncore. And you'd run a 4-piece Blizzard Strayer set on her as well for the crit rate, and you'd run attack percent on the Sands, cryo damage bonus on the Goblet, like with a Chongyun comp, or you can run physical damage bonus if you're running a physical Qiqi, and crit on the circlet. For Childe, the best weapon is definitely the Skyward Harp. It is really, really good. If you can get the Battle Pass weapon, it's amazing. I recommend Viridescent Hunt as like just a good 4-star. Hunt and Rust are close, depends on refinement, but overall I like Hunt over Rust, just because of the effect and the damage you gain, the crit rate, all that. I really like Viridescent Hunt. But Rust is also a great option. Now, something to note is that especially like level 90 and stuff, the Amos bow is actually better than the 4-star options. So if you do have Amos bow, you can use it. But do note that Harp is the best overall for Childe. The best free-to-play option also would be the Prototype Crescent for sure. The best artifact set for Childe is pretty clearly the Heart of Depth set. It's just so good. It's pretty much made for Childe. Just a ton of damage. Definitely the best one overall. Now, I know 2-piece Hydra with like 2-piece Noblesse can be good too, but for a DPS Childe, when you're actually using him as your main DPS, 4 Hydra set is definitely the best. And you'd want attack percent on your Sands, Hydra damage bonus on your Goblet, and crit rate or damage on your Circlet. For Childe, the talents are actually very different than most characters. So basically, you don't need to prioritize your normal attack leveling, because the main thing this does is actually just increase your Riptide damage. So I would put a much bigger priority on your elemental skill and burst. I would level skill first, then burst, and then if you want to, you can level normal attacks, but as you can see, I leave mine at level 5. So I would definitely prioritize the skill, because that is what buffs your damage when you're DPSing, because you are going to be in your melee stance the whole time. And your burst also has a nice scaling. If you want to be an absolute Chad who runs DPS Barbara, Skyward Atlas and Lost Prayer are 2 of the really good 5-star weapons you can run on her. I use Atlas when I run DPS Barbara. Another good 4-star option is the Witsith if you have it. And obviously the Battle Pass weapon can work too. And I would recommend the Mapamare for a free-to-play weapon. So artifact set for the Alpha DPS Barbara runs a 4-piece Wanderers as like the best set, because of the 35% charge attack damage and Elemental Mastery, especially if you're vaporizing, can be very nice. So 4-piece Wanderer is usually the best, but you can also run 4-piece Hydro set. Now, it can be annoying and usually a bit worse, because yes, the 2-piece is great, but the 4-piece will give you higher charge attack damage after you use your elemental skill, but your elemental skill has a really long cooldown. So while this does buff you for 15 seconds, the elemental skill cooldown is like 30 seconds, so it won't quite be like basically perma damage. For your stats, I'd recommend attack percent on the Sands, Hydro damage bonus on the Goblet, and crit on the Circlet. So I don't have Mona, so you're basically just going to have to listen to my voice here. Best 5-star weapon for her is the Skyward Atlas. For the 4 stars, Witsith is good, but Solar Pearl, the Battle Pass weapon, is good, so I would recommend one of those. Mapamare is the best free-to-play option. Now for your artifacts, Hydro set, the 4-piece Hydro set is the best, with a attack percent Sands, Hydro damage bonus Goblet, and crit on the Circlet. Sorry I'm going fast, but since I don't have her, I can't really show you guys much, so I'm just telling you what's the best. So you know. Now just keep in mind this is DPS Mona, so like a support Mona will want, you know, different artifacts, you know, energy recharge, elemental mastery are more important for support, but for DPS, this is what you'd want. For Razor, the best weapon overall is the Wolf's Gravestone, but Serpent Spine is an amazing option, and it's the Battle Pass one, so definitely get it if you don't have Wolves. It gives you crit rate and a bunch of damage percent, and it's really good, especially at high refinement. It's just an excellent 4-star. Now the best free-to-play weapon is the Prototype Aminus or Archaic, and the Snowtomb Star Silver isn't bad, but usually Prototype Archaic is just better. And artifact wise, the best overall is the 4-piece Glad. For Razor, it's just insanely good, but I know Gladiator is really hard to farm, and it's hard to get good Gladiator pieces, so if you don't have that, there's a few alternatives. First of all, 2-piece Bloodstained with 2-piece Glad is good. Another good one is 4-piece Thundersoother, because you can try to keep enemies afflicted by Electro for 35% damage bonus, and if you're running a shielder like Zhongli, 4 Bolide can actually work as well. But best set is definitely 4 Glad. For the sands, you want attack percent, and for the circlet, you definitely want crit, rate, or damage. Now, the goblet is actually a bit complicated because it depends. Usually, for most people, I'll just recommend physical damage goblet, and usually on Razor, it's the best. But if you're running Serpent Spine, and this depends on your team comp, and the refinement of your Serpent Spine and the constellation of your Razor, because a lot of it, especially like C4 plus, it can change. But with Serpent Spine in general, I tend to recommend attack percent on the goblet because of how much damage bonus you gain from your weapon. With low base attack, you do like to have attack percent given to you, so either a Bennett or an attack percent goblet can be nice. Now for the exact numbers and calculations of that, I'd check out the Razor main Discord, and I'm going to link them in the description if you're interested. For DPS Fischl, Harp is the best bow, and I would recommend Rust if you have it. The Battle Pass bow can be nice too if you need, basically, if you don't have Rust, Verdescent Hunt is great. And the best free-to-play option is definitely the Compound Bow because it does give you physical damage bonus. For your artifact sets, there are actually many different ones. I know you can run 2 Bloodstain, 2 Glad. You can run 2 Bloodstain, 2 Thunder Fury for mixed damage. 4 Thunder Soother can also work if you have high Electro uptime. So personally, for most people, I recommend 2-piece Bloodstained with 2-piece Glad for just high physical damage overall for most people. But there is a lot of nuance to Fischl's kit and how to build her, especially with like goblet wise. And basically my math guy is a Jeff77, basically dumbed it down to C0 to 5 physical damage is good, and C6 electro damage can actually be better. But as I said, there is a lot of nuance, but I would generally recommend physical damage goblet for most people, and at C6 is when I would recommend swapping to an electro damage goblet because of how good your C6 is. And for your other stats, I'd recommend attack percent on the sands always, as well as crit, rate, or damage on the circlet. For Beidou as a DPS, Wolf's Gravestone is the best. Skyward Pride is good too, but as a DPS, Wolf's Gravestone is the best. And then if you can get the Battle Pass Serpent Spine, that's also a great option, the best 4-star. And the best free-to-play option is the Prototype Aminus once again. Artifact-wise, I usually recommend 2 TF with 2 Glad, 4 Thunder Soother, or 2 Thunder Fury with 2 Noblesse can work as well, but I like 2 Thunder Fury with 2 Glad overall. And talent-wise on her, you actually want to maximize your Stormbreaker, your Elemental Burst, because of how good it is. Even as like support or DPS Beidou, it's just really good. And then normal attack and skill. And for your artifact stats, I'd prioritize attack percent on the sands, then electro damage bonus on the goblet, and then crit, rate, or damage on the circlet. If you're running Lisa as a DPS, first of all, why? But Skyward Atlas and Lost Prayer are the best 5-stars, the best weapons overall. Best Battle Pass is the Solar Pearl, and free-to-play option is the Mappa Mare. While you can run something like Thunder Fury, I think the 4-piece Thunder Soother is actually just the best set on her for a DPS because it's just 35% more damage against Electro-afflicted enemies. So that being said, you'd want attack percent on your sands, Electro damage bonus on your goblet, and crit, rate, or damage on your circlet. Something to note though is that you'd probably want to max your elemental skill the first because of how much damage it does, the crazy scaling. Like 600% at level 4 is pretty nuts, so it's probably what you'd want to max before your normal attack. We're going to talk about Keqing now, and there's a lot of ways to play her. I've always been scared to talk about Keqing because of how many different ways you can build her, and I don't want to misinform you guys, especially for Keqing, because she is a complex character. But I'm going to try to give you guys just the best options overall for different ways to play her, and I'm going to separate this in 2 sections. We're going to talk about physical Keqing and electro Keqing. And while you can play her like Cryo or Pyro, or there are a few random ways to play Keqing that can work, I'm going to focus on electro and physical. Also, this video is like a DPS video, so we're not going to go too in detail on like Quickswap. We're mainly going to be focusing on like a normal sort of auto-attacking Keqing build. So if you're running her Electro, you can run 2 Thunder Fury with 2 Glad as a good option, or 4 Thunder Soother, because you can, 4 Thunder Soother gives you 35% damage bonus against Electro affected enemies, and you can keep enemies affected Electro like all the time with Keqing. And while I don't want to talk too much about Quickswap, 2 Thunder Fury and 2 Noblesse can be nice for that type of Keqing as well. In terms of the stats you want, attack percent on the sands, electro damage on the goblet, and crit on the circlet, definitely the way to go for electro Keqing. For physical Keqing, the stats would still be attack percent and crit, but your goblet would be physical damage, obviously, instead of electro. And your artifact sets would change. Basically, 4-piece Bloodstain for charge attack spam can be good. 2-piece Gladiator with 2-piece Bloodstain can also work. 4-piece Gladiator can also work. And if you are running Fischl as an electro support, you can run a 4-piece of Thunder Soother. Now, I feel like if you're running physical Keqing and you aren't, obviously you're not proccing your E twice, running Thunder Soother without official support might be inconsistent, but if you have Oz constantly applying Electro on enemies, you can run this 4-piece. And for Keqing, I do recommend the Keqing main Discord for like the exact calcs on everything, because they know much more on Keqing than I do. For Keqing's weapons, Jade Cutter seems to just be the best overall because of how good it is, but I'd recommend Jade Cutter especially for Electro Keqing. Aquila is really nice on physical Keqing because of the physical damage bonus and the high base attack. For your 4-star weapon, definitely Black Sword. Like for the Battle Pass weapon at least, I would get it. The Black Sword is really, really good and a great 4-star option for Keqing. Do note that there are alternatives like Lion's Roar, and even Flute can be good. And for the free-to-play option, I would always recommend Prototype Rancor because it has a high base attack, and if you're running physical, the physical damage bonus is nice. For Diluc's weapons, the best is the Wolf's Gravestone for sure, just an insane weapon. The Serpent Spine is also amazing. It's the Battle Pass weapon, and it's just a great 4-star. Definitely worth getting if you do buy the Battle Pass. Really, really good. The Blackcliff weapon and Rain Slasher are both viable as well. Blackcliff weapon is really good, and Rain Slasher can be good with Xingqiu. And the best free-to-play weapon is the Prototype Aminus Archaic, if you do get it. And the way you want to build them is definitely a 4-piece Crimson Witch of Flames. You want to make sure you have crit on the circlet, rate or damage. Definitely much better than attack, especially in the late game. On the Goblet, you need Pyro damage bonus. And for the Sands, it actually depends. You can run attack percent or elemental mastery. Now, usually I recommend attack percent on the Sands, but if you're running like a Xingqiu and you're trying to basically proc vaporize in like a sort of reaction comp, you're vaporizing with Xingqiu all the time, you do want to be getting Elemental Mastery on your Diluc, so having that on the Sands is usually optimal. So for Xiangling, there's two ways to build her. There's the physical DPS Xiangling, and there's a Pyro Xiangling, which constantly vaporizes with like a Xingqiu, which are both good, and the Pyro one is actually more DPS late game when you invest into her and you have Xingqiu. But I know most people run Xiangling with a Crescent Pike, because that's also good. Crescent Pike is a really broken weapon, so I'm going to be talking about both. For physical Xiangling, obviously you want Crescent Pike. It's just free to play and very strong, best overall. For Pyro Xiangling, you'd run Jadewing Spear, or for a 4-star / Battle Pass, you'd run Deathmatch, and then if not, still Crescent Pike for the free-to-play. If you're running Xiangling with a Crescent Pike as a physical DPS, what you actually want is 2-piece Glad with 2-piece Bloodstained. Now, the reason why 2 Glad, 2 Bloodstained is better than 4 Glad or than other sets that give you just a flat damage bonus, like how you can see 4 Glad gives you that 35%. The thing is, 2 Glad and 2 Bloodstained, and I talked about this with Zhongli, so I don't want to repeat myself, but just in case you skipped that part, or just to clarify, 2 Bloodstained and 2 Glad do also buff the secondary hit from Crescent Pike, whereas Glad doesn't, so that's why it's the best overall for a Pike physical build. For a Pyro Xiangling though, you want 4-piece Crimson Witch because it gives you a ton of Pyro damage bonus, and it buffs your Vaporize damage, and you're going to be constantly proccing Reverse Vaporize with a Xingqiu support, doing 1.5 times damage on like all your Pyro NATO hits, and it does a bunch of damage. For physical Xiangling, you want to prioritize your normal attacks and then your burst. For a Pyro Xiangling, you'll prioritize your 2 skills, so your burst first, then your skill, and then your normal attack. For Bennett as a DPS, usually you run him in a melt comp with like a Chongyun or something, and it can actually be a very strong 4-star DPS option if you need it. Because of that, what you're going to be running is a 4-piece Crimson Witch of Flames, just a great Pyro DPS set. And basically what I was trying to say is because you're running him melt, what you want on your Sands is actually usually Elemental Mastery. Now, I don't have a good Witch one, or I would have it, but generally Elemental Mastery on the Sands is what you're looking for to maximize your melt damage. And then you want Pyro damage on the Goblet, and crit rate or crit damage on the circlet. For your weapon, all the 5-stars are great, the best one being the Jade Cutter if you have it. The best free-to-play option is the Iron Sting, and the best 4-star should be the Blackcliff Longsword for the high base attack and the crit damage. Also, the Black Sword, the Battle Pass weapon, is a good option. Something you guys need to know about DPS Bennett though is that his talent priority isn't normal attack first. Actually, you want to be maxing his burst and his skill primarily, or like before the normal attacks at least, because you're going to be spamming this E so much in your burst, and your burst has a huge scaling and buffs your attack ratio. Like, it gives you more attack the more you level it, so definitely level your burst and your skill as well. For Klee, who I don't have, all 5-star books seem to be really good. Atlas should be the best overall. Memory of Dust is also good, and Lost Prayer is also a good option, but I think Atlas and Memory of Dust seem to be the 2 best 5-stars. And then if you can get the Solar Pearl from the Battle Pass, that is a great weapon. Widsith is a good alternative, and the best free-to-play is the Mapamare. There are a few ways to run Klee. I would recommend either 2-piece Crimson Witch with 2 Glad, or 4 Crimson Witch. 4 Wanderers for a charge shot spam can work too, or even Lava Walker, but I recommend either 2 Witch, 2 Glad, or 4 Witch. And you would run her with attack percent on the Sands, Pyro damage bonus on the Goblet, and crit on the Circlet. Also, I want you guys to know that I've had to re-record this part like 8 times because Klee starts talking every 2 seconds. If you're running Amber as a DPS, the best free-to-play weapon is the Prototype Crescent, the Blacksmith one. And if not, if you do have a 5-star, run the Amos bow, which is the best one overall for charge shotting. Sharpshooter's Oath is also a honorable mention as a 3-star. For your artifact set, since you are charge shot spamming, you would want a 4-piece Wanderer's Troop for the nice effect that you get. And you'd run the standard attack percent on the sands, pyro damage on the goblet, and crit damage on the circlet. Now the reason it's crit damage and not crit rate for the circlet, while most characters you can interchange rate or damage depending on what you need. For Amber, since you're charge shotting, you can aim at the head, so you can basically ensure that your charge shots do crit by going for the the critical point, the weak spot of enemies. So because of that, crit damage tends to be much more valuable than crit rate, except on like slimes. But most enemies do have weak spots, so you can just charge shot on their weak spots and make sure that it crits. For Xinyan, I'd recommend Wolf's Gravestone overall for best weapon, but I know Unforged with the shield and especially High Refinement is really good. Apart from that, definitely get the Battle Pass weapon. If you can, the Serpent Spine should be the best 4-star option, and Prototype Aminus or Archaic is definitely the best free-to-play option. For your artifact sets, I'd recommend 4-piece Gladiator overall. 4 Bolide can be good too, and 2 Bloodstained with 2 Glad can also be a viable option. But I would recommend 4-piece Glad overall. It's just difficult to farm Glad, as you guys know. For your stats, I definitely run attack percent on the sands, physical damage bonus on the goblet, and crit rate or damage on the circlet. Okay, let's talk about Xiao now, and this section might be a bit longer because he's like literally my favorite character and there's a lot of depth to how you can build him. Now for your weapons, the best overall is the Jade Wing Spear. Just overall, it's an insane weapon. Now do note that the Shield Spear, the Vortex Vanquisher, is also really good, and if you're shielded, it can actually out DPS it from what I've seen. I also want to mention that Deathmatch is overall the best 4-star. Blackcliff Pole at max stacks can out DPS it, so against a lot of enemies, Pole can be good too. So Deathmatch and Pole are the 2 best 4-stars. But Deathmatch overall should be the best one. And for your free-to-play weapons, there's Pike and Star Glitter. Now I get asked a lot if Pike or Star Glitter is better, and I'll try to cover it in another video, but just to give you guys basically the short answer, Crescent Pike gives you a higher base attack, so just DPS-wise, Crescent Pike will out-DPS Prototype Star Glitter. However, if you need energy recharge, Prototype Star Glitter doesn't lose out on too much DPS, but also gives you energy recharge. So for most players, I honestly think that extra ER is usually better, especially if you can avoid it on your substats and focus more on crit. Star Glitter can let you build more crit, especially in comps that need more ER, so I think it depends on your comp, and I don't want to talk for like an hour on Xiao, but Pike is more DPS, Star Glitter is more ER, and you can pick whichever one you need. But I personally like recommending Star Glitter better for most people because I feel like the ER is more helpful than the slight DPS increase. For the artifact set, you definitely want a 2-piece Glad with a 2-piece Viridescent. It's just a ton of nice damage, and artifact-wise, you want attack percent on the sands, a Nemo damage bonus on the goblet, and crit on the circlet, either damage or rate. Now for the goblet, I want you guys to know that a Nemo damage bonus is the best. If your substats are terrible, attack percent can be viable. Like attack percent with really good substats can replace Anemo until you get a good Anemo one, but definitely try to get this damage bonus goblet. If you're running Jean as a DPS, the best weapons are obviously 5-stars. A Jade Cutter and Aquila Favonia are both amazing on her. If you can get the Black Sword from the Battle Pass, that is the best 4-star. And for the free-to-play weapons, Prototype Roncoeur is definitely the way to go because of the high base attack and the physical damage bonus. Set-wise, the 4-piece Gladiator should be the best for Jean overall as a DPS. Stat-wise, you'd want attack percent on your sands, physical damage bonus on your goblet, and crit rate or damage on your circlet. Now Venti can be a DPS because of the sheer amount of damage he deals. His DPS, his MVs are just so high that basically he's a DPS even without auto attacking, especially in comps like Quickswap teams. If you're running with like a Venti Jean comp at high investment, Venti's going to be the one doing all the damage. So I do consider Venti to be a DPS, but something to note is that you're not going to be leveling his normal attacks. You're going to be prioritizing his burst and his skill in that order. So the way you want to build Venti is your weapon. The best one is the Skyward Harp if you can get it. Really good alternatives though are the Battle Pass one, the Viridescent Hunt, and Stringless, which is the best 4-star. And for free-to-play options, there's the Prototype Crescent and the Favonius Warbow, which are good. Favonius Warbow gives you more energy recharge, so you might need it for but this is more for a support Venti, but Prototype Crescent will give you more damage because of the attack. So I'm just going to suggest both because it depends on what you need. For your set, for the max damage, you want 2 Viridescent, 2 Noblesse. If you're still running them kind of a support, you can run 4 Viridescent, but for raw damage, 2 Noblesse and 2 Viridescent will give you a ton of damage on your ult. The way you want to build them is attack percent on the sands. It does do more damage than Elemental Mastery. And then on the goblet, a Nemo damage bonus and crit on the circlet. I quickly want to talk about Sucrose in case you are running her as a DPS with Beidou and Fischl and just other supports that are going to be doing a ton of damage while you proc Viridescent Venerer on your swirls. So there's this funky comp. You guys can check out other videos on it, which runs Sucrose as a DPS. I'm not going to get into it, but if you do run it, know that the best thing to run is a 4-piece Iridescent Venerer with energy recharge on the sands, EM on the goblet, and EM on the circlet, so maximizing elemental mastery. And the best 4-star weapon would be Favonius Codex for that comp, sacrificial frag in general, and you can also run Thrilling Tales as a free-to-play option. You'd also prioritize your burst and your skill over your normal attacks for this comp. We're going to talk about the main character now, and the builds are basically the same for Geo and Anemo. There's a slight nuance that I'm going to talk about, but if you're running them DPS as Anemo or Geo, it's usually basically the same. Now for support, it does change, but as a DPS, you're going to be running them as a physical damage dealer anyways. So both of them do want Aquila as the best weapon. Black Sword is the best 4-star. It's a good battle pass option, and the best free-to-play weapon is definitely the prototype Rancor. For both Geo and Anemo, you'd want a 4-piece Gladiator for that 35% damage bonus and your the 18% attack that the 2-piece gives you. You'd run attack percent on the sands, physical damage bonus on the goblet, and definitely crit on the circlet. Now the only nuance, the only basically difference between Geo and Anemo is that if you're running Geo, you can actually afford to have a 4-piece Bolide if you want. I still think 4 Glad is usually just the way to go, but since Glad is really hard to farm and you can be shielded in the Geo, with Geo main character, you can run Bolide instead if you want to. So the only characters we didn't talk about are Diona, Albedo, and Xingqiu because they're not really main DPSs. Like I know there's a Xingqiu DPS build that's out there right now, but overall, I don't think they're worth talking about, at least for now. I hope this video wasn't too long, guys. I know it was pretty long, but I hope it was informative. I hope I covered everything. As I said, be sure to check the pinned comment in case I want to add something or I missed something or anything, because it does happen. Although I did research this video a lot, and actually it took me so long to make that I really hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know if you did, like all that stuff. But mainly I hope it was helpful, because as I said, it took a while. I want you guys to know I'm going to be streaming tonight on Twitch, so come check it out if you want. And that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed. Subscribe if you want to. If you don't, that's okay too. And I'll catch you guys in the next one.